Hey, welcome to On Hand Art. My name is Brett. It's great to see you. Now, a few years ago, I made what might be considered the world's smallest paper house. So today I'm going to show you what might be the world's smallest candy house. Let's get started. I'm imagining a winter wonderland style house, so I got a bunch of these decorating sugars with a range of bright colors and crystal sizes. I'll also be using white glue, tweezers, and a small wire cutter. But to start, I'll pour out some of the wrong size sugar, don't know what happened there, before getting the right one out. And you'll see it's much larger crystals. And then the base is a disc of basswood. You can find these at any craft store. And I'll start with a small amount of white glue. What I've learned is that too little glue, everything falls apart, but too much and it all literally melts quickly. So you have to get it just right. Then the first trick is to get these foundational pieces in place as level as possible, which really just means a bunch of tiny adjustments with a gentle fingertip and my tweezers, and with a lot of patience to make sure they're centered on the disc and they're straight relative to each other. And this patience thing is not my strong suit, so, kudos to me here. Then it's just adding the last 6 pieces and taking the time to make sure that they are all straight and square as possible. And that just means more gentle nudges and cajoling with the sides of these tweezers. Once I got those first 3 pieces in place, the last 6 went relatively quickly. All right, now once the first level is fully dry, I can add the second one. And I'm still using a very thin smear of white glue. Again, I only added enough glue to hold the sugar, but not so much that it started to melt the first level of sugar. It still kind of did, which was a little bit of a blessing in disguise because it did kind of level things off for that second tier. As I'm adding these pieces of sugar, since the surface is uneven, I'm making sure that each piece is resting on each other. And I ended up spending almost 10 minutes nudging these pieces in place. But the overall look of the house depends on taking the time to get it right. So I really just kind of forced myself to be patient and take the time. I ended up spending so much time on the first 3 that I actually had to add more glue to get the last 6 in place. With those first 3 in place, the last 6 did actually go much quicker. Still, it took some patience and gentle pokes and nudges with the tweezers to get it looking the way it should and to keep it on top of that first tier of sugar crystals. All right, while that dries, I can move on to the roof, and then after a little off-camera testing, I landed on using this printer paper as the base. After a really thin coat of white glue, it's just a couple of dips into some regular white sugar, and then I'll form it and set it aside to dry. I'm risking the extra glue because after I get the roof on and centered, I'm actually gonna, off camera, I'm gonna stuff little pieces of sugar under there just to fill in the sides. And sorry, I had to do that off camera to preserve my sanity and eyesight. But with that glued on and dry, I'll add these colorful lights. Now, these crystals were way too big just laying by themselves, so I ended up cutting them off and replacing them later. And luckily the glue also peeled off and just kind of left the roof almost untouched. And as you can see in the overlay, I discovered that I can use my wire cutters to cut the crystals in half, and they look much, much better. I'll show you all of that at the end, but the process for attaching those smaller crystals was the exact same as you're seeing here. And now I can add the snow around the house. I'm using a really thin layer of glue again. And then I tried these large crystals, but that was a huge mistake. So after brushing them off and getting them off the house and everything, I went with regular sugar. And then when that was dry, I added these little colorful bushes in the form of these little candy balls. I'm not trying to make them look like trees or anything. I'm just kind of playing around, making it look colorful and fun. The chimney is more of the same light blue crystals, but I'm being careful to choose a large one for the bottom and then gradually get smaller as I go up. And I did have to cut out some of the roof to fit the upper pieces, so my wire cutters, a little bit of off-camera cutting did the trick, but don't worry, you didn't miss anything on the off-camera cutting, but you can see the results here. And then I also had to wait for each of the crystals to dry before adding the next one. But onto the windows, and these are just a couple of yellow square crystals, so not that interesting. I just glued them in place, and it was just a lot more nudging and cajoling them into place, and I got bored of showing that. So onto the red door. And I wanted a red door, but I didn't have any red sugar that was thin enough to look right on the house. So I ended up having to cheat a little by mixing this red sugar with a bunch of glue. And then I spread it out really nice and thin. And that just took a little bit of smushing it into place and getting it to the even thickness. And then once that dried, I just cut it out with a hobby knife. That's why it's on plastic, by the way, so it kind of peels off. And those three crystals up there are actually there for sides. But anyway, once I cut it out, I just tweezered it in place. And I'll show you the final piece in about 30 seconds. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me today. You know, I had a ton of fun on this project. It was really fun to kind of build something that tiny and intricate. My eyes are still recovering, but I had a lot of fun. And I'm sure you saw that it was challenging to light it and to video something that small. And I have done macro photography in the past, so I'll actually show you some of those stills I've gotten of snowflakes and flowers and things at the very end, so stick around for that. But if you did like this video, please consider subscribing, maybe tell a couple of friends, and give it a thumbs up. Anyway, without further ado, here's the finished piece.